Okay, let's look at our energy flow notes. This is actually part one. We will have a second part where we talk about like energy pyramids and food chains and webs shortly. But in this section, I have posted on there, you can see in the same section, uh, there is a doc that's attached that has a blank table on it. You can either take your notes on that or you can write it on your own paper. It's up to you. The only reason I put a doc on this one is because there's a table that we're going to fill out in a little bit where we talk about producers, consumers, and decomposers. And that's just if you don't want to draw that out or if you don't want to make that on docs yourself, you can just edit that. Whenever we write, though, there are more things besides just the table, so you can just skip below the table to type out the other stuff. And you'll see what I mean as we go along. So, let's get started. First of all, you don't have to write this down unless you need it. So, before you came to me, you should have learned about the difference in a predator and a prey. So, just in case you've forgotten, or maybe you totally don't remember learning that, maybe you didn't, I don't know. I've written this down. So, if you need to know, if you can't remember it or you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, write this down. If you know it, you know you're never going to forget it, you don't have to write this down. But a predator is something that hunts, a prey is something that is hunted. So if we think about a bear catches a fish from a stream to eat, then the predator would be the bear because it's hunting. The fish would be the prey because it is hunted, it's eaten. So sad. Um, if you think about even like if you like to deer hunt, you would be the predator, the prey would be the deer. So anything that hunts is the predator, anything that is hunted and ultimately probably eaten is the prey. So again, if you don't know that, write that down. If you do know it, don't worry about it. So write this down. From here on out, write this stuff down. We have three main types of organisms that we're going to look at, and these are producers, consumers, and decomposers. So you can write this down. If you are doing the doc, if you're editing that, just go under the table and write this down. And then in just a second, we'll come back up to the table. So we'll look at each of these. So if you don't have the table drawn, you don't know what I'm talking about, draw out a table that looks like this. Should be 3 columns, 2 rows. One row is really small. We're just going to write one word in those. And then we have the longer part. We're going to actually write information about each of those words. So the three main types of organisms, we have producers, consumers, and decomposers. So producers, one thing that makes a producer is it makes its own food through photosynthesis. That food is glucose or some sort of sugar. And what a producer is it produces its food. So if you think about like a flower, they don't have to go eat. They don't go to McDonald's and grab a burger because they're hungry. What they do is they take in sunlight and other things, but we're going to go really basic today. They take in sunlight and it hits their leaves, and all this crazy stuff happens, and food is made, sugar is made, glucose is made. And the plant can then take that glucose, that sugar, that food, and it has energy to do all the processes that that plant needs to do. So producers produce their own food through photosynthesis. Consumers, we consume food, we eat. And decomposers, they break down dead or decaying organisms. And that's really what's interesting about this is that means that they eat because they take in something else. They have to physically take something in. It's not like a producer where the sunlight hits their leaves and like crazy stuff happens. Internally, decomposers have to eat. They have to take something in to get that energy. So we can also say that decomposers are consumers because they have to eat. So that's really important. But because of the stuff that they do, they're in different categories. But if we were going to say a decomposer is most like a producer or a consumer, we would say consumer because they do eat. An example of producers would be any kind of plant you can think of. We typically think of green leaf plants. We think of like algae, flowers, shrubs, trees, things like that. Consumers, an example would be humans or anything else that eats. That could be like a dog, a cat, a rabbit, whatever. Decomposers, the example I always give is mushrooms. That's the age old example. You can't go wrong with that. Bacteria are decomposers too, and other things. Now, here's the fancy words that I want you to know. So, the fancy word for producer is autotroph. If we break that down, autotroph means self feeder. So the prefix auto, that means self. Like if you have a car that has an automatic transmission, then that means that the car changes gears itself. You don't have to worry about it. If you have in your car, if you have automatic windows, you push a button and the window rolls down. You don't have to manually crank the window. So trough is just like, if you think about, if I ask you what a trough was, you may say something that like pigs eat out of. That's right. A trough is something that you eat out of. It's a feeder. So autotroph means self feeder. That's producers because they feed themselves. They sit there, the sun hits them, there's food for them. They don't have to go seek out food. It's made within themselves. Consumer, the fancy word is heterotroph. That means different feeder. Hetero, if you think about, if you talked about like mixtures last year or sometime before you came to me, you may have a homogeneous or homogeneous mixture or a heterogeneous or heterogeneous mixture. Hetero means different. So a heterogeneous mixture would be like if you had a beaker and you put water, some sand, and some rocks in your beaker and you mixed it all up, you could still see the different layers. So hetero means different. Heterogeneous mixture, you can see the different layers. Heterotroph, you eat from some other source. You eat from a different source. You're a different feeder. You don't just feed yourself. You have to go find something to eat to give you energy. And the thing I want you to remember about decomposers, didn't give you a fancy word for it, sorry. It's more like a heterotroph if you want a fancy word. But what I need you to know about decomposers, this is so important and it's key to everything that we're going to learn from here on out, is decomposers recycle nutrients. So everything that we're going to talk about in this chapter is in a cycle, some way, somehow. So even a food chain, whenever we talk about that, we say it's going to be in a straight line, one direction, that's it. But at the end, what happens? There is no true end. It's just like a circle, even though we're looking at it as a straight line. Because decomposers come in and they break that food or break those organisms down, those dead organisms down. And then they take the stuff, or that makes the stuff that's in those organisms reusable again. So, something that comes up a lot in bell work is the nitrogen cycle. So, bacteria, which are decomposers in the ground, when something dies, they will go and they'll break that organism, that dead organism down. And there's a lot of nitrogen in our bodies, in the bodies of living things, whatever they may be. And the bacteria will break that down and they will allow it to be like the plants or whatever's planted in the ground to be able to take that nitrogen up through their roots. And then some crazy stuff happens and the nitrogen's able to go back out into the atmosphere. So the really important thing to remember about decomposers is not just that they break down dead stuff, but they take the stuff that they break down and they allow those nutrients to be recycled. That's so important. Nothing just ends. If there were no decomposers, we couldn't have life because we'd run out of stuff really, really quickly. So the last thing we need to write down is this right here. It's so important. I will say this all the time, forever. The ultimate source of energy for all organisms on Earth is the sun. So the ultimate source of energy for me is the sun. Now, am I a producer? Do I sit there and say, man, I'm hungry? Okay, I'm full now. No, I go out and I eat. I'm a consumer. But how in the world does the sun give me energy? Well, think about it. What if I eat a salad for some strange reason? I'm eating a salad for lunch. The lettuce, the carrots, those types of things that are in that salad, they grew. They were producers. So they took in energy from the sun, and now I'm eating the salad, so I'm getting energy from the salad, which got energy from the sun. So I'm getting energy from the sun. If I go a more filling route and I have a steak for lunch, then steak comes from cow. Cows eat grass. Grasses are producers. So the sun gave its energy to the grass gave its energy to the cow, and the cow ate the grass, and the cow gave its energy from the grass from the sun to me whenever I eat a steak. So we're all connected because the ultimate source of energy for everything that's alive on the earth is the sun. So that's it for this section of notes. We will work on part 2 next. If you have any questions, if any of this is confusing, especially whenever you do the predator-prey assignment, if you are confused on that, please let me know because I'll give you more work so you can figure that out. I'll give you some videos, things to watch, so that makes sense for you. So if you have any questions, just let me know.